Hello, it's Saturday the 5th of September. You're tuned in to our 6 p.m. newscast coming to you from Arirang's news centre in Seoul. It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this evening, President Park Geun-hye says cooperating on ways to restore peace and stability on the Korean peninsula dominated her recent summit talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Our presidential office correspondent Choi You-sun has the details.
Wrapping up her three-day visit to China, President Park Geun-hye told reporters that she and Chinese President Xi Jinping agreed to cooperate to peacefully reunite the two Koreas.
조속한 시일 내에 그런 한반도의 어떤 평화 통일을 어떻게 이루어갈 건가 하는 거에 대해서 다양한 논의가 이제 시작이 될 거라고 이렇게 생각하시면 될 것 같습니다.
Considering that China is North Korea's traditional ally, observers have highlighted the significance of Beijing agreeing to cooperate with Seoul on reunification. While stressing that a peaceful reunification would be the ultimate and definitive solution to North Korea issues, including the regime's nuclear program, President Park said Seoul will continue working with Beijing on deterring Pyongyang's provocations. When asked about China's role in the two Koreas' recent deal to defuse tension, the South Korean leader said that there were close consultations between Seoul and Beijing, and the Chinese government did everything within its means. Looking beyond China, President Park said she will continue her summit diplomacy to promote the positive effects of inter-Korean reunification on world peace and stability. And she's likely to raise the reunification issue when she meets U.S. President Barack Obama in Washington next month. President Park also talked about President Xi agreeing to seek a trilateral summit with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe between late October and early November.
앞으로 한중일 정상회담을 이제 이루기 위해서 아마 이제 일본 측하고도 얘기를 하고 그래서 날짜가 정해질 겁니다.
President Park said while Japan hasn't yet come forward to act responsibly about its historical wrongdoings, she had emphasized to the Chinese leader that there's a need to re-engage with Tokyo for peace in Northeast Asia. Choi You-sun, Arirang News.
Now, President Park's visit to China not only helped solidify diplomatic relations with Beijing, it also brought some positive economic results. Korea's presidential office of Cheongwade says 43 deals worth a combined $280 million were inked between Korean and Chinese companies during the three-day visit. The business leaders had joined the president on the trip. Officials say more than 1,400 one-on-one business sessions were held in Shanghai on two separate occasions. First was the Korea Brand and Entertainment Expo at the end of last month, followed by Friday's Korea-China Business Forum. Around 190 Korean companies and nearly 600 Chinese firms took part in those meetings. UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon has responded to Japan's criticism of his decision to attend China's World War II Victory Day event earlier this week. Speaking to China's state-run broadcaster CCTV, the UN chief said Japan seemed to be under the misperception that the UN is a neutral body. He stressed the United Nations is impartial rather than neutral. Ban said it's important for countries to learn from the past, adding that it's difficult to move in the right direction if they don't. He added that reiterating that view was the main reason he chose to go to Beijing. Now, Ban's comments come after Japanese media reported Friday that the ruling Liberal Democratic Party will send a letter of protest to the UN Secretary-General over his attendance. A handful of senior Japanese officials have also said that they were disappointed Ban had made the trip. The United Nations has asked North Korea to let it investigate reports of forced disappearances and abductees in the country. US-based news agency Voice of America says the UN filed the request with Pyongyang earlier this year, but the regime has yet to respond. The details were included in a report from the UN Working Group on Enforced or Involuntary Disappearances submitted ahead of an upcoming session of the Human Rights Council. Now, watchers say the North is highly unlikely to agree with the request, considering that it has always refused to acknowledge the matter. A UN report released last year found that enforced disappearances are carried out systematically and on a massive scale in North Korea. Foreign citizens have also disappeared after willfully travelling to North Korea or after being abducted abroad. Thousands of migrants and refugees have been arriving in Austria after Hungary laid on buses to help them reach the border. The surprising decision by Hungary only came after many refugees had lost patience and set off on the long walk to Austria. Police say around 4,000 refugees have arrived at the Austrian border from Hungary so far, but that number could more than double by the end of Saturday. The governments of Austria and Germany have both said that they will grant them access despite EU rules meant to restrict the movement of unregistered migrants. The refugee crisis has come to be symbolised by a single photograph and a single family's grief this week. On Friday, the little boy, whose body was washed up on a Turkish beach as his family tried to flee to Greece, was buried along with his young brother and their mother. The father has implored countries to act. So what contribution are they willing to make? Park Geun-hye reports.
The two Syrian toddlers who drowned with their mother, along with 9 other people, were finally laid to rest on Friday in their hometown of Kobani. The grieving father of the toddlers said he hoped the deaths of his loved ones would lead to more help being provided to those in need.
My entire family passed away. They are martyrs now, but I hope they can help who are still in need. Enough with this war. I don't know what to say more. I'm so tired.
A heartbreaking photo of the 3-year-old boy Aylan Kurdi, who was found washed up on Turkish beach, went viral this week, igniting public outrage against developed countries over their perceived reluctance to help the refugees. Responding to the calls, British Prime Minister David Cameron said Britain would take in thousands more Syrian refugees. He also vowed to spend a further $150 million on humanitarian aid to address the Syrian refugee crisis. In a newspaper interview on Saturday, German Chancellor Angela Merkel said Germany can cope with an influx of refugees and migrants this year without raising taxes, but she expressed hope that refugees could be distributed more equally across the European Union. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry also said the U.S., which has donated over $4 billion in humanitarian assistance to Syria, will assume an even greater role in addressing Syrian refugee crisis. The UN estimates that this year alone, over 300,000 refugees have already traveled across dangerous sea routes to reach Europe. Around 2,500 people are thought to have drowned making the journey. Park Geun-hye, Arirang News.
Now, Boeing's commercial crew spacecraft finally has a real name. The company has announced that the spacecraft, previously just called the CST100, will now be called the CST100 Starliner. The Starliner, built to carry up to 7 astronauts, will be assembled and processed at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Starting in 2017, Boeing plans to build 3 Starliners for 2 flights a year to the International Space Station. Boeing is one of 2 private U.S. companies contracted by NASA to transport astronauts to and from the ISS. Korea has become only the 2nd country in the world to successfully harvest eggs from captive Pacific bluefin tuna. The development has scientists working on a breeding system that could secure future supplies in the hope of bringing the highly valued fish to dining tables around the country in just a few years' time. Won Ji-yeon reports.
It's a popular yet expensive delicacy here in Korea. Pacific blue tuna, which can weigh up to 450 kilograms, are prized for their fatty flesh. Unfortunately, they're facing extinction due to overfishing in the Pacific Ocean. But there may be a way to save this prized species. Korea's Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries recently announced that one of its research centers has successfully harvested bluefish tuna eggs from captive fish.
The hardest part of farming and harvesting eggs from the bluefin is maintaining optimal water temperatures during the winter.
Most of the tuna being farmed were taken from the wild in 2011. With its successful harvest of 250,000 fertilized eggs, Korea is now the 2nd in the world after Japan to reach the feat.
There are a lot of limitations to capturing the fish from the wild, but by exporting farm-raised Pacific bluefin tuna, we could raise over $400 million in annual profit.
Scientists are now working to increase the survival rate of the bluefin inside the farm. By creating the best conditions to harvest a steady supply of eggs, scientists hope to commercialize the farm-raised bluefin by 2018. Won Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
And finally, taking a brief look at the weather, most of the central region will see on and off light rain for the rest of the evening. Overnight, we'll see the temperature dip to a low of 19 degrees Celsius in Seoul. Sunday will be mostly dry with some sunshine in most parts of the country. And highs nationwide will mostly range in the mid to high 20s. Next week is forecast to be warm with lots of sunny spells, but nights will gradually begin to cool. With that, let's take a brief look at the weather around the world. Well, that's all we have for now. There's plenty more news on the website, arirang.com/news. Do enjoy the rest of your Saturday and stay tuned to Arirang TV. We'll be back with our next newscast at 10 p.m. Korea time. Until then, goodbye.